October 25, 1533. The palace of Marseille glittered beneath a canopy of torchlight and celebration. But within its stone corridors, something far darker was unfolding. There exists a letter, they say, locked deep within the Vatican's secret archives. A document so disturbing that only a handful of scholars have ever been permitted to examine it. Its parchment carries not just ink, but tears and small dark stains that experts believe may be traces of human blood. The letter was written by a 14-year-old girl named Catherine de Medici, and what she confessed within those pages should never have happened to any soul, let alone a child bride promised a crown and a future. This is not a story of romance or royal pageantry. This is a story of trauma so profound that it shattered a young girl's innocence and forged in its place something cold, calculating, and utterly merciless. Because on that autumn night in 1533, Catherine de Medici did not become a queen. She became a weapon. Catherine had been sent from Florence to France as little more than a pawn, a strategic marriage arranged between kingdoms and blessed by the Pope himself. She was educated, cultured, fluent in 5 languages by the age of 12, and trained in philosophy, Latin, and even the alchemical arts by her maternal aunt. She had been raised in the convent of St. Lucy, where discipline and learning shaped her into a young woman of remarkable intellect, but none of that knowledge, none of that preparation could have readied her for what awaited in the bridal chamber. The official chronicles speak of a grand wedding, of music and wine and jubilation, but they omit entirely what occurred behind closed doors. Documents uncovered centuries later reveal the existence of a ritual known as the purification ceremony, a medieval practice whispered about only among the oldest noble families, never recorded in any official register. It was said to cleanse foreign brides of impurities deemed incompatible with royal blood, a tradition so barbaric that it existed only in shadows and hushed voices. Catherine walked those cold stone corridors on her wedding night, her silk-gloved hands trembling despite the composure she had been taught to maintain. She believed she was about to experience the first intimate moments of marriage, perhaps awkward, perhaps tender, but certainly private. Instead, she entered a chamber where 23 high-ranking nobles waited in hidden passages, peering through slits in the walls, eyes gleaming with morbid anticipation. Some sipped wine slowly. Others placed bets on how long the young Italian girl would endure. Her husband, Henry of Orleans, was only 15 himself, physically strong but mentally malleable, completely under the control of his 34-year-old lover, Diane de Poitiers. Diane had orchestrated every gesture, every word, every moment of degradation that was about to unfold. She ensured that Catherine's humiliation would be absolute, a spectacle designed not just to break her body but to obliterate her spirit. What followed cannot be described in explicit detail, but its effects were devastating. Catherine screamed in Italian, pleading for mercy, but her cries were met only with laughter echoing through the stone walls. The trauma was so severe that the delicate blood vessels in her eyes ruptured, causing a rare hemorrhagic phenomenon. She wept tears streaked with blood. 3 times during that endless night, the court physician revived her after she lost consciousness, and 3 times she was forced to endure more. By the time dawn broke over Marseille, the girl who had entered that chamber no longer existed. In her place stood someone who had memorized every face, every voice, every cruel laugh. Someone who would spend the next 2 decades transforming that humiliation into the most patient, calculated campaign of vengeance Europe had ever witnessed. If you're still with me now, if you feel that chill creeping down your spine and that pull of dark curiosity, then subscribe, because stories like this, the ones that history tried to bury, are what we bring to light here. And I promise you, what comes next will make this night in Marseille seem like only the beginning of the nightmare. For 3 years, Catherine de Medici wore the mask of docility with flawless precision. To the French court, she appeared meek, adaptable, a foreign bride learning to navigate unfamiliar customs. She smiled when required, absorbed insults without protest, and cultivated strategic alliances that would serve her later. But in the privacy of her chambers, she kept a secret diary, and within its pages were 23 names, each written with meticulous care, each accompanied by notes on their location, their habits, their weaknesses. This was not merely a record. It was a ledger of condemnation, a blueprint for justice that would unfold one death at a time. Her first target was Jean de Montmorency, a proud courtier who had wagered on how long the young bride would last before breaking on her wedding night. Catherine remembered his cruel eyes, the way he casually sipped wine while watching her suffer. 3 years later, that memory became his death sentence. The poison she selected was no ordinary mixture. In a hidden chamber of the palace, officially reserved for medicinal herbs, she had developed a potent blend of hemlock and mercury, perfected over months of careful experimentation. Its effects mirrored the pain she had endured: violent convulsions, pink foam at the mouth, hours of agonizing suffering before death finally granted release. Jean de Montmorency was found dead on a cold winter morning in 1536, and the court whispered of food poisoning or fever. Only Catherine knew the truth. A small vial of dark red liquid, accompanied by a brief note reminding him of the night he had witnessed, had been delivered in secret. It was her signature, her silent declaration that she neither forgot nor forgave. One by one, the witnesses fell. Each death was calculated with surgical precision, each method carefully chosen to reflect the nature of their crime. Some died quickly, others lingered in agony for days, yet suspicion never fell upon Catherine. She was too careful, too patient, too skilled at maintaining her facade of fragility. But no one suspected that the shadow belonged to the quiet Florentine queen who smiled politely at banquets and kept her eyes downcast in court. Diane de Poitiers, the woman who had orchestrated the entire nightmare, who had trained young Henry to enact every gesture of cruelty with deliberate precision, who had controlled the prince's every decision with an iron hand. Overthrowing Diane would require the patience of a master strategist, and Catherine had decades to perfect her plan. She began with something subtle, almost imperceptible. Small doses of toxins were introduced into Diane's food and drink. Quantities so minute they raised no suspicion but accumulated slowly in the body. Day by day, Diane felt her vitality wane, her memory slip, her once sharp reflexes dulling. Meanwhile, Catherine attended every banquet, every gathering, maintaining her courteous smile as she watched the woman who had destroyed her innocence gradually deteriorate. It became a silent duel, a test of endurance in which Catherine dictated every move while remaining invisible. Decades passed, and at last in 1566, Diane de Poitiers succumbed at the age of 66 after drinking wine offered by Catherine herself. A rudimentary autopsy revealed slow deterioration of her internal organs, the signature of prolonged poisoning. Catherine had replicated in Diane the drawn-out suffering she herself had endured, multiplied over years, achieving not merely death but vengeance in its most exquisite, patient form. But one name remained, the final piece, the crown jewel of her campaign. Henry himself, the man who had enacted her humiliation while shadows watched from the walls, could not be allowed an ordinary death. His end had to be symbolic, a perfect culmination of more than 2 decades of careful plotting. On July 10, 1559, Paris hosted a grand tournament celebrating peace with Spain. The square overflowed with nobles and commoners eager to witness King Henry's skill in the joust. Confident and proud, Henry accepted a challenge from Captain Gabriel de Montgomery. From her royal box, Catherine watched with an expression of perfect composure, but her eyes followed every movement with calculating focus. When the lances met, a wooden fragment pierced Henry's visor, striking his eye and penetrating deep into his skull. The crowd gasped as doctors rushed to his aid, but the king lingered between life and death for 10 agonizing days, plagued by convulsions, fever, and hallucinations. Modern analysis of the preserved spearhead revealed traces of an unknown organic substance, likely applied beforehand, a toxin designed to intensify and prolong his suffering. While no one could ever prove Catherine's involvement, a strange symbol marks Henry's tomb to this day. 3 interconnected circles with a vertical line through them, the same symbol Catherine had etched in her own blood on the bridal chamber wall back in 1533. Catherine de Medici's story does not end with Henry's death. She would go on to rule as Queen Mother, wielding unprecedented power over 3 successive French kings, her sons. She would become one of the most formidable political figures of the 16th century, feared and respected in equal measure. But the foundation of that power, the crucible that forged her into an instrument of calculated ruthlessness, was that single night in October 1533. She had transformed humiliation into dominance, trauma into strategy, and pain into a weapon so precise that no one saw it coming until it was far too late. History remembers Catherine de Medici as a queen, a politician, a patron of the arts, but perhaps we should remember her as something else entirely, a survivor who refused to let her suffering define her as a victim, who instead became the architect of her own justice, no matter how dark the cost. The question that remains is this: when the world breaks you, when it strips away your innocence and leaves you with nothing but rage and memory, what do you become? Catherine's answer was written in blood across 2 decades of silent vengeance. And somewhere in the Vatican archives, that yellowed letter still waits, ink and tears and stains. A testament to the night a girl died and a queen of shadows was born. What would your answer be? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, because stories like this force us to confront uncomfortable truths about pain, power, and the price of survival.